Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Kreitis. Today is Friday, August 21st, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Before we get started, quick shout out to my dad, my old man. Happy birthday, Pops. We love you. Many more. Hardest working guy I know and the greatest guy I know. And that's saying something because I have a lot of good guys and women in my family. He's the best. We love you. Title of today's podcast, Weekly Wrap-Up. We'll get to some market performance, brief discussion, and we'll see where it goes. With the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, wrapping up this week. And then, obviously, next week is going to be the start of the Republican National Convention. So, we have one three-ring circus that has come to town and has left. Next week, we're going to have the other three-ringed circus come to town, and then they will be on their merry way as well. A recap of some of the data that we discussed yesterday, and sort of what is the end game, especially when it comes to all of these moratoriums. But first, let's cover some quick market performance to round out the week. The dollar index is at 93.20, a little bit of a rally in the dollar index today, back above that 92 handle, again, 93.20. So that's going to be something that we're going to continue to monitor. A lot of implications with the strength or weakness of the U.S. dollar, especially going forward from here. On the stock market front, we have the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.7%, the S&P 500 gaining an additional 1/3, and the NASDAQ 100 gaining nearly 0.7%. Up, 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 and away. On some individual shares, we have Apple gaining 25 points for the day, another increase of 5.4%. I imagine this is on the back of the news that's a week or two old already, that they too are going to be doing a stock split, which we discussed when it came out. 4-1, I believe it is. And of course, as we discussed yesterday in relation to Tesla, because they're doing a stock split of 5-1, their stock continues to go parabolic, gaining another 51 points today. This is Tesla, up 2.5%, now trading at $2,052 per share. Again, this is going to be Tesla and others, but especially Tesla is going to be a poster child for this era. Just like you had your companies back in 1929, like you have in Great Depression, when you got them dot-com era, when you're having a great financial crisis. You got various names out there, various industries. Tesla is going to be in the top 10, make no mistake about it. These valuations are through the roof. People clearly don't understand what a stock split means, especially the amateurs and the rookies out there. Apple is still going to have a $2 trillion market cap after the fact. It's not going to multiply and become $8 trillion. It's not how it works. So their valuation is still going to be in the stratosphere, which I personally think is unjustified. Now, I'm a small fish in the broader market, but you look at history, you look at valuations, this is in uncharted territory. And don't think that it can't happen. You know, you got to manage your money on a risk-reward basis. It's really what it comes down to. Got to understand risk. You look at 1929, the Dow collapses over 90% over a couple-year period. It had a massive rally, a 6-month rally, something we are witnessing right now. Across the board, but really right now in the NASDAQ. We are there with this 5-6 month rally. And then back in 1929, 1930, said, that's it. We're going down, down, down. It's what happened in 2000, 2001. It's what we saw in the great financial crisis too. That's why I say stay diversified and stay vigilant, because this is out of control, to say the least. On the commodity front, WTI is trading at $42.34. A barrel. Brent is at $44.25 a barrel. Natural gas continues its climb higher, trading at $2.43. Gold and silver pulling back. Spot gold at $1,939 an ounce, and silver is trading at $26.75. And to round it out, Uncle Sam's 10-year Treasury junk note is yielding spot 6.4%. Still somewhat range-bound, but still seeing a rally when it comes to the yield. And remember, a bond's price and its yield is inversely related, so if we see a rally to the upside in the yield, it means there has been selling in the bond market. Now, again, is this because people are saying, okay, there's inflation, we don't want bonds, so we're going to get out of bonds? Are people buying into some sort of economic rebound? I don't think so. I think it's more the inflation picture, and so they want out of bonds and trying to perhaps rotate into stocks or riskier assets, even though they are at all-time record valuations. This is a very, very dangerous situation, especially for people who have never witnessed this type of phenomenon, which is a bubble economy. So be careful out there. Now, of course, yesterday, we unfortunately reported the news with initial jobless claims being back above 1 million, 1.1 million in change. We continue to lack true clarity with the jobs picture because of the various distortionary government policies that have been enacted, especially the Nobody Cares Act and the PPP loans. People standing around, doing nothing. Well, we have anecdotal evidence that that's the case, given some articles that we have come across here. And it has been a question I have been posing for weeks, if not months. And it's no surprise. That's a stipulation for the loan to become a grant. Got to get your employees back if you already laid them off. If you were going to lay them off, don't do it. Get the PPP money. Make good on keeping them on payroll or bringing them back. And then it's all going to be forgiven. Well, what happens when those funds are exhausted? And we're reaching that point, folks, where a lot of these PPP loans are being exhausted. Now, most of them will be forgiven. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. Most of them will be forgiven, which, of course, gets added to our national deficit and thus our national debt, because we're financing all of this. And don't forget, as we discussed a few months ago, when you break down how much money the government was borrowing, begging, spending, and printing, again, just for the second quarter of 2020, our government borrowed $3 trillion just for the second quarter alone. And we said, well, if you take that and you divide it by the number of people who were unemployed at that time, it came out to about $75,000, $80,000 per job. And we know through various jobs reports that most of those jobs were in the hospitality, travel, and leisure sector, which do not pay anywhere near $75,000 to $80,000 on the average. Not even close. Again, that was just one way to measure how out of control our government is, because we got to do something. Well, we're all going to be paying for this something. We're already paying for it now. We've been paying for all of the other mismanagement. It was all coming to a head. This was not the greatest economy in American history prior to COVID-19, and we're going to hear a lot about that next week. Make no mistake about it. Not true. If you want to believe the hype, you're free to believe what you want. If you want an education, then get on capitalnews.com. Look at the archives. Get on my YouTube channel, The Capital News. Go back. We look under the hood here. We don't just read the headlines. We go through the entire report. We look at all avenues. We try to paint the best picture we can with the information that is given us. And again, a lot of it remains cloudy and blurry because of these distortionary effects. But they can only kick the can down the road so far. They can only sweep the dust and dirt under the rug for so long. It's piling up. The piper always gets paid, and it's going to be nasty. That's why I was asking at the top of the podcast, what's the end game? all of these moratoriums, mortgage payments, rent payments, maybe your car payments, maybe insurance payments, student loans. How much longer is this going to go on? And what about people who actually have the means to pay their mortgage, to pay their rent, to pay their car payment, etc., etc.? What should those people do? Should they continue to pay them because they can? Because what's the end game? Is all of this debt going to end up being forgiven? Well, then what's the incentive to pay your mortgage? What's the incentive to pay your student loan? What's the incentive to pay your rent? You get what I'm saying here? So many people who have done the quote-unquote right thing, acted in a prudent, frugal manner, who said, you know what? I have an obligation. I took out this loan. I'm responsible for this loan for whatever purpose. To buy a house, buy a car, get an education. That's on me. Nobody forced me to buy a house. Nobody forced me to get a loan to get an education. I did that. An investment in myself, something I wanted to do, whatever the reason. That's on you. That's your responsibility. So all those people who did the right thing and said, okay, I'm not raking in the big bucks, but I'm living comfortably, and I'm responsible for these loans, for this debt. Yes, I'd love to go out every weekend with my friends and party it up and have a great time, go to a nice restaurant here and there. I'm just going to say I can't do it because I have these other responsibilities. I might forego a nice vacation this year because I really want to get out of debt. What's going to happen if all of this debt is forgiven? I don't know if that's going to happen. That's the question. That's the open-ended question here. What's the end game? Democrats don't have a plan. We heard this last week. They got nothing. Trump's got nothing. This is just going to be the demonization. This is just going to be the continued attacks. Joe Biden's empathetic. He's a family man. Country's in a dark spot. He's going to be the man that brings the light, yada, yada, yada. Donald Trump is going to say, they're going to raise your taxes. I'm going to cut your taxes. China's bad. Biden did nothing for 40 years, yada, yada, yada. That's nothing. That doesn't solve a damn thing. That's why these are three-ring circuses. It's just a question, ultimately, do you want to deal with Trump for another 4 years, or do you just want to put Biden back in there? That's all it comes down to. It's just a question of personality. These two demented jokers are just that. They're demented jokers. And it all depends on who you talk to, too, right? Because I know personally, you can have a serious conversation with people, friends, family, etc. And you can talk about Joe Biden. Okay, yeah, he might not have all his marbles there. But then if you say the same thing about Trump, I'll get people, especially if they support Trump, they just laugh. They just laugh. It could be the same thing. If Joe Biden says something, he's demented. Trump says something, slurs his speech, mispronounces something, whatever the case might be. It's the double standard. Well, it's funny. They laugh. They'll rail against Biden. They'll laugh if it's Trump. It makes no sense to me whatsoever, but this is just Looney Tuneville. Okay, you want to laugh, that's fine. Again, I don't care. They're both demented jokers as far as I'm concerned. And I got a lot of evidence in my case, in my corner. Now, if you think Joe Biden is demented, it's probably because you're watching Fox News and they're playing a whole bunch of clips of him slurring his speech, mispronouncing somebody's name, forgetting something in mid-sentence, whatever. But if you had done what I have suggested to this audience months ago, to flip through the stations and to turn on CNN or MSNBC, guess what you're going to see on those stations? You're going to see the same thing, but with Donald Trump slurring his speech, mispronouncing names, forgetting his train of thought mid-sentence. But only one of them to some people, and it's both sides. It's both sides. They're both demented jokers. They are both unfit for that office. But one of them is going to be in there for the next 4 years. I'm not putting either of them in there. I'm not voting for them. Neither of them have earned my vote, so they're not going to get my vote. I am not going to be put into a position of choosing the lesser of two evils because I am not going to be voting for any type of evil. I don't want it. And what you're going to hear next week is a lot of tax cuts versus tax hikes. And as I've stated here, and I'm going to continue to sound like a broken record because that's the whole purpose of this podcast to begin with is to combat to the best of my ability that of the 24/7 news cycle, which is also a broken record. And they are going to try to convince you through various Republican pundits and various Democratic pundits that there's only two solutions. It's only the Republican way or the Democrat way. That's it. There's no third, fourth, fifth, sixth option. Just those two. That's it. How's that working out for you? So why do you want to endorse either side of this ledger? I don't get it. I really don't. And I've spoken to a lot of smart people on this. I have this conversation all the time with friends and family. I respect everybody's opinion. I'm very open-minded. But I don't get, I honestly don't, how they can vote for either one of them, given the backdrop of everything that's been done and is likely going to continue in all likelihood. Okay? Now, if the Republicans should win, if Donald Trump should win, and they say, okay, we're going to do more tax cuts, you're going to cut spending? Probably not. You know why I can say that? Because they haven't done it before. And if you cut spending, which is what you should do, but they're not going to, that would take a hit. GDP would take a hit. Because GDP is just a basic arithmetic function. It's government spending, it's consumption, it's investment, and it's net exports. Add them all up, there's your GDP figure. Well, government is one of those variables in that equation. If you cut government spending, you're going to bring down that number, especially in the short term. In the long term, it would be very healthy for the economy. And I would argue that GDP would grow at a faster rate if you did cut spending, because government doesn't make anything. It makes a mess. It has to take. Doesn't make, it takes. And it takes from the productive sector. It takes from a productive economy. So there's less productive and fruitful dollars floating around the system in the hands of those productive agents. And it gives it to a bunch of idiots in Congress and in the White House. They mismanage it, don't have enough money, got to beg, borrow, steal, and then they got to go to the Banana Republic printing press. And Jay Powell and company at the Federal Reserve are just salivating, waiting for Congress to pass another spending bill. Just waiting. And it's coming. Make no mistake about it. It's just a question of how much. That's all. Because we still have all of these moratoriums for a short while. We're going to continue to do it? For how much longer? Is all of the back rent, is all of the back mortgage payments, car payments, everything, is that going to be forgiven? Start anew? Well, then why should people now, if that is the end game, why should they make a mortgage payment? Why should they make a rent payment? Seriously, yes, it's the right thing to do, but if everybody else is going to be forgiven, if that's the end game, then what's the purpose? What's the purpose? You might as well look out for yourself. Might as well pocket that extra $500, $600, $1,000, $50, whatever the payment is. Put it in your pocket. Save it up for a rainy day fund. Got a long time horizon? Put it in an IRA. Compounding interest over time, if you have a long time period, going to do quite well for yourself. Why give it to some joker? Why give it to a bank? Why pay anybody if it's all going to be forgiven? How are we going to grow out of this? How are people going to be able to pay? If they can't pay 1 month's rent, how are they going to be able to pay 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months back rent? How is that even possible? So you either allow for market forces to do what they do. You either allow for this total cleansing, which needs to happen. Yes, it's going to be painful, but it's going to be painful with all of this kicking the can down the road too. And in fact, it's going to be much more painful, in my opinion and my analysis, because of what they have done and what they continue to do. And I don't say this just to say it. I have history on my side. I have sound economics on my side. Did a mini-series on history of the Great Depression. Go check it out. CapitalNews.com. Check it out at the Capital News YouTube channel. I highly suggest that you do. Because the only thing that's different this time is it's going to be that much worse. We had a Great Depression, 1930s. We are in the midst of the greatest depression now. One country after the next is on the brink of some form of collapse, social, political, economic, if not all. Global protests prior to COVID-19, they are only heating up. They are only going to get worse. I don't have to tell you, folks, it ain't a pretty picture. I take no pleasure in announcing this grim outlook. But to me, it's the honest one, and that's what is needed. That's what is needed. There is no leadership. There is no honesty. And that is what is needed most in this hour. And we're not going to get it from Joe Biden, and we're definitely not getting it from Donald Trump. It's a continuation of the manipulation. It's a continuation of printing money out of thin air like a banana republic. And if you want to take the other side of the coin, you want to take the other side of the argument from what I make and say, okay, modern monetary theory is here, universal basic income, UBI is here, and it's a panacea. It's perfectly fine. There's no negative side effects, no negative consequences, no downside whatsoever. Okay, make that argument. Then tell me why I would have to continue to pay taxes, and tell me why I would have to continue to pay my bills. Because if all we have to do is print money, then what do you need my taxes for, and why do I need to pay my bills? Do what I suggested a month or two ago. When you get a bill, check that little box, make them turn over that piece of paper and say change of address, and put 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, that's the White House, put the Capitol building, put the Federal Reserve. Attention Nancy Pelosi, attention Mitch McConnell, attention Donald Trump, Peter Navarro, Larry Kudlow, Stephen Mnuchin, Jay Powell, whoever you want to give it to, makes no difference. That's the point. So what's the end game here? Because you got 30 million Americans who claim to be underfed, 40 million Americans waiting in the wings for some form of eviction over the coming months, and we're supposed to believe that there is going to be some sort of miraculous V-shaped recovery in the broader economy. I don't think so. I don't think so. Again, 1.1 million Americans filing initial claims last week. This is because the PPP loans are being exhausted. And if the demand is not there for these companies to warrant keeping their employees on the books, then they're going to lay them off. This is basic business cycle behavior. You have your peaks, you have your troughs. Companies are supposed to get leaner and meaner. And of course, one of many travesties in all of this government interference and distortionary effect is, of course, the creation and perpetuation of zombie companies, which continues to be a huge drag on future growth, current and future growth, and it hurts those strong managers and entrepreneurs who are doing the right thing. Because what should happen is those weaker managers, those weaker entrepreneurs would go out of business, or they would have to restructure. And in that process of them going out of business or restructuring, the stronger, smarter managers and entrepreneurs would gain that market share. They would gain those assets that would have to be sold off from those weaker players. That's a good thing at the end of the day, folks. Is there a transition? Of course there is. Of course there is, but that makes it better for everybody. That doesn't mean that the businesses that went out of business can't rebound. It doesn't mean that those managers and entrepreneurs can't learn a valuable lesson from that experience and come out better, or go work for one of those stronger players, learn a lot, and then say, okay, now I know what to do this time, and then go back out and start their own company. That's all a possibility. That's all fantastic stuff. We as a society, we as an economy are better off when that happens. But nobody wants to feel the pain. Nobody wants to take the hit. So we have 20% of our traded companies classified as zombie companies, and this number is only going to get worse. We have special purpose vehicle created through the Nobody Cares Act that allows the Federal Reserve to basically shred their charter and allows them to work in tandem with the Treasury Department to buy corporate debt of the world's largest corporations. But we can have Congress can't come together to continue another spending bill for people who are going to be evicted and people who can't afford to feed their kids. But we can continue with no problem whatsoever to buy Apple and all of the world's other largest corporations. We can continue to buy their corporate debt. No problem. Nobody even says a damn thing. How many Americans do you even think know that that is going on right now? Because I think if enough knew, there would be a revolution in the street, and rightly so. I'm against all these bailouts, all of them. But as I have been stating here, if they're going to continue to bail out the largest corporation in the world, Apple, by purchasing their corporate debt, the corporate debt of Amazon, of Toyota, of BMW. I mean, there's only a list of 800 of them, folks. Go look it up. If they can continue to do that with our money, by the way, with our money, and if they lose the Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve, any of them, if they lose, those losses will be backstopped by we the people, the taxpayer. They can't lose, but we can. This is going on. So if you can continue to bail them out, why can't you bail out everybody else? This is why you don't do this, because you pick winners and losers. That's what the government ends up doing. And who do you think they're going to pick to be the winners? Those who fill their political coffers with millions of dollars, or the people who they represent? I mean, that's a very simple question. Very simple question. But both sides are going to do their damnedest. The Democrats gave it a shot this week. The Republicans will be up next week to prove to you that it's their side that has the solution. Here's another kicker for you. What was it? Two of those parents who tried to get their idiot kids in a college they otherwise couldn't get into. The Full House mother and her Italian designer husband. She got, 2 months in prison? He's getting 5 months in prison, and then I think maybe they both have house arrest or something. I don't give a crap. I don't care. Point I'm making is you have that on one hand. That's our justice system, okay? You got these rich folks. Again, I'm not demonizing wealth. More power to you. Fantastic. I want everybody to be successful. But you got these rich parents trying to get their rich kids into a fancy college that they, I guess, otherwise couldn't get into based on their own merits. Okay, you find out that they were messing around, bribing somebody to get them in. Okay, you committed a crime, paid a price. All right. But we have banks. We have banks that are known to be involved with money laundering. We have banks that are known to manipulate various asset classes in various markets. These are facts. This is documented stuff. I mean, they get caught. They go to court. Nobody from the C-suite, none of these executives, none of these bankers go to jail. Nobody on the board goes to jail. And furthermore, with the fines that they have to pay, literally creates a situation where crime pays. Because, and we documented this in our book, The Cynic's Guide to Investing, okay, which again was published 5 years ago. And we highlighted the crimes that were taking place before, during, and after the great financial crisis. And of course, they continue to this day. I mean, this is well documented stuff. So you can have these banks manipulate interest rates, precious metals market, all of the markets, every asset, foreign exchange, anything they can manipulate, they manipulate. Money laundering, nothing happens. They pay a fine. They may have stolen They may have stolen billions, but when the government gets through with them, they end up paying, millions, even a couple $100 million. But if you made billions and all you got to pay back is $100 million, crime pays. Nobody goes to jail. But try to get your kid into a college they otherwise couldn't, you're at least getting 2 months, 5 months, house arrest, something. These bankers walk. And this tells you, it should tell you all you need to know about the system. And who do you think creates the laws that allows these jokers in these institutions, in these banks, and elsewhere to skate? That's right, the Republicans and Democrats. The same clowns that are putting on their 3-ring circus over the last week, this week, and next week. And you're going to go into your box, you're going to pull your lever, you're going to get your little sticker, and you're going to vote for one of these 2 demented jokers at the top of the ticket, and then you're going to vote for all of their lackeys as well. And then we're going to be back here 4 years from now with a national debt of God knows what, $35, $40 trillion, and you're going to be scratching your head. What happened? How can this be? I voted for this guy. He's there. He was supposed to fix it. Well, I'm going to cut my taxes. Your taxes are going up, folks. I don't care what these idiots tell you. Your taxes are going up. State, local, county, too many shortfalls. They are going to make it up. They're going to attempt to make it up. And it ain't going to be through economic growth. So it's going to have to come from taxes. Federal government, again, assuming that Trump and the Republicans gain the House and the Senate and the White House. Even if they cut taxes, they're not going to cut spending. And there's not going to be enough economic growth to justify the payment for all these other things. So it's going to have to be made up through the printing press, which is inflation. And inflation is the most destructive and devastating form of taxation that there is. You get it? I'm up against a billion-dollar machine. You got to turn people onto the Kapital News. You got to get people educated. That's what this program is. It's not just news, it's an education. Because you're not going to hear this anywhere else. And this is not difficult to comprehend. This is basic economics. It's basic mathematics. That's the weekly wrap-up. Next week should be interesting with the RNC. We'll cover that like we did the DNC. The convention for the Democrats this week. If there's any breaking news, I'll be back on Sunday. Other than that, enjoy your weekend, and I'll catch you here next time. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Kapital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.